Welcome. I'm your host, Brian Rue. This is July 26, 2024. Our guest is Birdie Jaworski. She's a celebrated remote viewer, writer, podcaster, beekeeper, digital forensic expert, and cryptocurrency guru. Birdie has used her remote viewing talents to solve missing person cases, aid law enforcement, and predict major market shifts. She's also an avid UFO experiencer and leads the Albuquerque UFO UAP Explorations, the most active UFO group in the United States. And we're going to start off with a 5-minute video she made on remote viewing, just as an intro. So I'll just do the share screen and share sound now.
Apologies if you've seen this, gang.
Okay, so here we go. And there's my screen. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Birdie. I'm the organizer for Albuquerque UFO UAP Explorations. I'm a mom, a grandmother, a writer, a digital forensics and cryptocurrency expert, and a beekeeper. And for a while, I was the most famous remote viewer on the planet. It all started back in 1995 when something on the news caught my eye. A short man with a blonde page boy haircut stared into a reporter's eyes and said yes, he was a psychic spy trained by the United States government to capture snapshots of classified targets using only the power of his mind. The government admitted to spending over $20 million in taxpayer dollars for a program called Stargate, which studied psychic abilities in soldiers with the hope that they could essentially build a psychic spy. Now that the original group of remote viewers, like the man on the news, had reached retirement age, the program was closed and declassified. The official line was that the program garnered mixed results, some absolutely incredible, mind-blowing intelligence, but not enough to continue pouring money into the work. Unofficially, the project continued under a new name in management, a black budget abyss. The man's next words grabbed my arm and pulled hard, and I could train you to do the same. Anyone can learn. This man, Major Ed Dames, had been training a civilian, an academic who taught at Emory University, Dr. Courtney Brown. Brown would go on to write a New York Times best-selling account of his experiences remote viewing aliens, Cosmic Voyage. Brown launched a school in the months after Stargate was declassified, the Farsight Institute, to train others to remote view with an emphasis on alien communication. He charged over $3,000 to learn these unbelievable skills, and I was broke and pregnant with my last child. I bartered computer skills for a seat in one of the first classes. I was one of the first civilian remote viewers and the very first pregnant person to ever learn how to remote view. I quickly became known as a remote viewing prodigy and over time became second in command at Farsight, the vice president. I left to form my own school using modified remote viewing methods I knew would garner better results. My business would employ multiple remote viewers from across the world, all remote viewers that I had trained. We successfully worked on missing persons cases, unsolved murders, missing treasure, and were even hired by hedge funds to help massage their portfolios. In 2001, all hell broke loose. The Twin Towers in New York City were attacked. A prediction I had posted on the internet on our website as part of a larger project quickly started making news rounds. In 1998, several years before 9/11, I had drawn and described the attack. New York Magazine published a profile on me. The London Sunday Times sent reporters and photographers to take my remote viewing class. One of the reporters broke down crying during a session when he realized he was experiencing the emotions of the people at the blind target. I was featured on television shows of all kinds, from the Learning Channel to CBS Sunday Morning. Even women's magazine Cosmopolitan sent a reporter to take my class. You might have seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, starring George Clooney. It was based on a book by British journalist John Ronson. Chapter 6 in the book, it's about me. I have so many crazy stories from my public days in remote viewing. I eventually walked away from public life after increasing resistance from the government and wandered the world doing other things. But I kept remote viewing privately and researching and discovering how to best maximize my own remote viewing potential. And now I'm here in Albuquerque about to teach you.
Okay, Birdie, that was quite an introduction. So take it away.
Hey guys, I'm so glad you're all here. So glad to see everybody. Hey, I've got some of my original RVers here, which is super exciting. And I'm going to say this before we get started, because this is a Q&A section. You guys get to run the show. The person who asks what I feel is the most interesting question tonight wins a signed copy of my now out of print book, Intentions, the Intergalactic Bathroom Enlightenment Guide, and a jar of honey from my backyard beehives. So welcome one and all. It's so great to see you all. I am older and wiser over 20 years later from leaving the remote viewing field publicly, but I never actually left. I kept doing it and studying and researching and wondering. And today my life is all about UFOs and remote viewing. So let's take it away. Anyone have any good questions?
Yeah, we can use the hand feature where it says on the bottom reactions, hands up. I can help chair for Birdie. We have 40 of us here.
Woo!
Okay. Remote viewing, any questions at all?
Remote viewing, UFOs. Guys, you want to win this book. It's a good read. It's got everything. It's got UFOs, aliens, my own personal story.
Oh, Lisa Young's here.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know how to work this thing. Anyway.
Yeah, do you want to try your
right.
camera? Do you want to turn your camera on for the video?
Well, I thought I did.
It's where it says on the bottom left, it says stop video. You just click on that. It's red. You just turn off the red on where it says stop video. There you go. Yeah, you had it on and then you turned it off and now you're muted. So you have to unmute yourself and turn it back on. Okay. Yeah, you just did that. Yeah, it's on. Don't touch it now. It's
Okay. So I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, hey,
okay.
I can see you.
I'm so sorry. Forgive me. When you said that you were kind of, I guess, harassed by the government, like what's some things that they did?
Oh my
to
gosh.
make things hard for you. Too many things to count.
This was insane. Okay, so at the time,
I believe
and multiple remote viewers can back this up because they experienced it too. Now I had young kids at the time. They're all way grown and out of the house. I even have a granddaughter, but at the time, over 20 years ago, as an active remote viewer, and I was really pushing the boundaries of remote viewing at the time, and I was going against some of the things that the military remote viewers had said, and I kind of had an in-your-face attitude. I'm a little softer and more gentle now in my older age, but not that softer and gentle. I'm here to shake things up, guys. That's why I'm coming back out publicly. And I'll talk about that if you guys ask me about it. But at the time, we had in front of my house, literally 24/7 unmarked white vans, literally 24/7 for weeks on end, just parked in front of my house. I was living in Southern California, in Carlsbad, California at the time, and on a cul-de-sac, quiet street, and there would be 6 or 7 vans, literally 24/7. I received death threats. In person, people would come up to the door, knock on the door, and give me death threats against my children, my young grade school children. I received death threats over the phone. I received death threats in email. It was a very harsh environment. There were hate sites put up about me, and some of those are still in existence today, and they just make me laugh today. They really bothered me for a long time, where they called me crazy. They said she believes in all this crazy stuff and she has said all these things. Yeah, I did say all those crazy things because they're true. And it was an inhospitable environment. I believe at the time it was also a misogynistic environment, because all of the military viewers who went out public were men. And some of these guys had some harsh things to say about me at the time. And I think everyone's temperatures have become a little more leveled over the years. And perhaps some of the ones still living wouldn't say the same things today. I don't know. I don't keep in contact with any of them. But it was a difficult time, I think, for someone who was a woman who had her own remote viewing empire, so to speak, and who was talking openly not only about remote viewing, but about using remote viewing to explore the UFO phenomenon. Even today, I am noticing in the field that there are so many people who are kind of against using remote viewing to explore all of these wonderful unanswered questions. And I personally think it's the best use of remote viewing. There are many uses of remote viewing, but I think truly using it to discover what we don't know about the universe around us is one of the absolute best uses, because it's really hard. You know, what do we know about the UFO phenomenon, right? We only know what we're being told. We can look at sightings and reports over generations, and we're still waiting for the government to come in and tell us what happened. Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting for a bunch of old men to tell us what happened? Let's discover it ourselves. So yeah, I was pushed out of public life through death threats and literal death threats against my children. And that's why I decided to become just a completely private citizen, change the name I was going under, and started doing all kinds of other things to kind of obfuscate who I was in reality and in person. But I never stopped working on this. Yeah.
Were you ever hit with those, what is it, EMF waves or something that like caused you to...
There have been all kinds of crazy things that I've been hit with. My computers, you know, I've had computers fry. I have had all kinds of interesting things happen at my home, you know, electricity going out when no one else in the neighborhood. Yeah, there were a million different things. And this was a long time ago. So, you know, it's all a little fuzzy in my mind at this point, but it was a big, huge, horrible experience. And and honest to God, it scared me for some years. I was terrified I'd be found out again. I moved from Southern California to the hinterlands of New Mexico. I lived in Las Vegas, New Mexico, in the northern part of the state, which is a small rural community. And I ended up starting my own newspaper up there. I mean, I always do things in a big way. So I had a lot of fun, but I always kept remote viewing. And I have worked with a number of people throughout the years and trained people. And I have developed my methods, and they're completely different now than they were over 20 years ago, and very, very, very different from the military model. And I think what I'm doing is groundbreaking. So I'm excited to start sharing it with everyone.
I think you're the lady. I watched this on YouTube, a Sean Ryan show, and he was a remote viewer that he had on his show. I think you're the one. He mentioned you. Pretty sure that's who you're who that was.
Probably. I don't know. I've got a little bit of a cult following going, and I love you all. You are all welcome in the cult of Birdie. I'm just putting it out there because everyone's going to start saying it's a cult.
Okay, we got quite a few hands up. I've got them in order here, and some people have trouble finding it's where it says reactions on the bottom and then hand up. But first we have Don. Is your hand still up there, Don?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so Birdie, I guess I'd want to pick up where the first question left off. I saw the movie where the reporter came to your door and asked you for an interview, and you said could you come back tomorrow? And then I guess overnight you moved. Is that what happened?
Well, no, that's actually not what happened at all. I didn't move for, I don't know, another year after that, but that reporter, that was John Ronson. He
Right.
wrote The Men Who Stare at Goats, and
Right.
he was persistent, and he
That
was
came out in the
there.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, he was out there with, there were all these government vans around, and he never ever, and you have to ask yourself why. He was literally parked amidst these government monitoring vans, and he never questioned or went up to any of them, but he was trying to question me. So it was really bizarre. But I did give him an interview because I felt, well, what the heck, give him an interview and get on with my life. And it did finally shut him up and got him to leave, but the government van still stayed, and pretty much until the day I moved.
So, do you keep in touch with, say, John Vivanco? I took classes from him.
Yes,
I
I
don't
just
know what
talked with
he's.
John the other day. He's one of the only people who knew where I was all these years, and
Mm.
he is one of the best friends of my entire life, and probably all lives. I think we've had many lives together. I love him with all my heart. He is a good friend, and we've had a lot of laughs and just a lot of interesting conversations about things, especially recently, because I hadn't talked to him in some time. And then when I kind of came out of the closet on Brian's show not too long ago, we reconnected and started talking. And John's a wonderful friend, and we have a lot of similar ideas about remote viewing. And he is more focused, I think, on the more experiential portion of remote viewing, and I'm focused on that too. And I think that one of the things that I've been working on that's really interesting, that I don't think anyone else has really been working on, is kind of the analytical portion of it. And I should mention here, because we have all kinds of people in this Q&A right now. And I know there are a lot of people interested in remote viewing, and they're very educated in it, and they've been following the field for a while. But it's also, this group is also a combination of two amazing UFO groups, Brian's UFO group in Vancouver and my UFO group here in Albuquerque. And some of these people are not as educated in remote viewing. They're more interested in the UFO side. And so I want to explain what remote viewing is for everybody. And remote viewing is the process by where you use only the power of your mind, your own being, to get information from any time, any place, anywhere, anytime, anything. So remote viewing is essentially a psychic process that literally anyone can learn to do. The government trained soldiers to become psychic spies, and this was declassified, Project Stargate, in 1995. And I learned remote viewing at the end of 1995, one of the first civilians to learn the military method. And I modified those methods, started my own company, and then went underground. And I've still been working on it. And now I have my own methods and own ideas about it. So that's what remote viewing is. But that's a good question. Thank you.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, but there was a class I think that you were giving. Might have been the one that's on YouTube right now. And you invited at the end of the class for the entire class to come up for it with a target that you and the professional remote viewers were going to, work on.
Okay.
And they came up with this, what was the most secret target that you ever worked on? And then the power went out. Is that really true?
My gosh. Yes. I remember that like it was yesterday. We were in a hotel room in Carlsbad, California. This is where I was teaching the classes at this time, little hotel on the beach. And literally the entire power went out. Everything went out. Everything got dark. The power didn't come back up for some time, but it was clear that it was, it wasn't a coincidence that this happened. There was no reason.
That's what I was wondering, what your thoughts were about that. It seemed like
we laughed so much because it was just par for the course at that time. That's just generally how it was. No matter what you did, you faced resistance. And I'm curious to see how much resistance I might face today coming back out, especially with all my new ideas. And at the end of all this, I'll tell you where you can find out more about what I'm doing in this. But oh my gosh, it was insane. That was, and I mean, it was fun. It was fun going against the powers that be. I loved it. I loved.
The thing that struck me was like the invasive nature of their technology. Apparently, you know, if this was not a coincidence, if they were interfering, how were they scoping you guys out? I mean, this is beyond my comprehension.
Well, you know, my classes were advertised on my website and everybody knew where I was teaching and when. And I generally taught at the same place. And I was teaching, I don't know, at least once a month, sometimes more than that. And I taught in other areas. I traveled, I taught in London, I taught in Australia, up in Chicago, many places around the globe. And but usually the most interference happened there in Southern California. I think that's because that was a super known area that I was in, and it was easy to set.
Hotspot
And
or something.
I live just a mile away from where I was teaching the classes, and I was being harassed in my home, and you know,
Well,
it was insane. It was.
I've heard a
insane.
lot about you, and I've always wanted to meet you, so it's kind of an honor to finally do so, and I'll turn it back over to
It is
you.
an honor to meet you. Thank you.
I'm all right. Back to you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Don.
So next we got Carol and then Marks. Carol, good to have you here.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. I'd like to know if you think it's possible to remote view the next Wednesday's Lotto 649 winning numbers. That's my question. And what is your pro tips?
Oh, okay. Remote viewing the lotto. Now, there are a number of ways to remote view the lotto. And yes, I have remote viewed the lotto a bunch of times. I've been pretty successful. In fact, my group at my company was called Transdimensional Systems back in the day. And we did have a lotto group, and we oftentimes did target lotto numbers. We were pretty successful. I'd come up with this algorithm where I'd have everyone remote view particular things, and I would combine what I thought was into the winning numbers, and we won money almost every time. And that money we then gave to charity. So there was no person that was taking in the winnings from the group. We gave it away to Animal Humane Society was what it was. But I don't remote view the lottery anymore. And that's for personal reasons. I have remote view things like cryptocurrency earnings. I am a cryptocurrency expert. I did go back to school, got my master's degree in digital forensics. And my actual background in that is in discovering where cryptocurrency has been moved. So I've worked as a consultant, and still do to this day, for law enforcement in the courts to discover where people are hiding, especially like in divorce cases. The guy has a bunch of Bitcoin and he hides it somewhere. And so, you know, I'm hired to find out these things. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is about the lottery today. Now, a number of people are using things like what's called associative remote viewing, ARV, where they will remote view, they will come up with a task where they're looking at, they'll say, if this number, say, is a 6, then you will remote view the Great Pyramid. You're associating a number with a target. And there are a number of people doing different kinds of, and that's very simplistic. It gets way more complicated than that. It's a whole field of study unto its own. And I do think that this works. Absolutely. I think we do have somebody on the Zoom today, John Knowles, who has been doing this extensively. And he was in my remote viewing group in the past, and he now has done all kinds of interesting things. And but I'm not involved in doing the lottery anymore. And it's for a number of different reasons. And one of them, the main reason that I don't do the lottery anymore, is because I am just more interested in where we are going as a human species, where we're going with humanity. And I also have I'm going to make some remote viewing enemies here, but I have a real problem with associative remote viewing. I think that targets, what you're looking at, should be extraordinarily clear. I think that when you set yourself up with if you want this, then view this, that you're setting yourself up for ultimate mental failure long-term. And I do have a lot of research in this area. So sorry, John, sorry, everybody. I love you guys very much, but I have a lot of complicated feelings about it. So if you want to remote view the lottery, I do suggest looking into associative remote viewing and to see what those folks are doing. But and you can absolutely do it. I've done it. Lots of people have done it. I've made some money in cryptocurrency, to be quite honest, in it. And I've decided that it's a dead end for me personally, that I would rather look at bigger questions in humanity, but you can do it. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So next we've got Mark
Thank
and
you.
Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Mark, and then Andrew had a request in the chat. So Mark, you're on.
All right. First off, let me say I'm glad that you're back around, Birdie. I've heard a lot about you, and it's like Don said, an honor to speak with you. I've got another question I'm going to ask in a moment, but the one I want to think is probably more topical since you brought it up is talk a little bit about the harassment that you experienced. It might just be through the passage of time that seems like a really extreme reaction. You know, I know a lot of remote viewers who work esoteric targets like UFOs, and they don't have vans parked outside.
This was over 20 years ago, 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago. And I'm a lot older now, but at the time, you know, remote viewing was so new to the public. And this is like, I don't know that it's going to be the same today. Now, I've just been dipping my toes in for a couple of weeks now, and I haven't experienced anything in that time period. I had many people telling me that it's safe to come into the water now. Now, is that true? I do not know. I'm not entirely sure, but I haven't been experiencing the same or any harassment like I did then. But at the time, it was absolutely intense and insane. I believe John Vivanco has written about this in his book, what he experienced too, and I experienced, and others in our group. It was absolutely perverse. It truly was. Death threats, very, very graphic death threats. How not just that they would kill my children, but how they would kill my children, and death threats, you know, against my own person. They even threatened to kill my pets, and then they made themselves completely present in the in the cul-de-sac that I lived at, just vans, and my kids were exposed to this. They saw it every day. They knew. They're like, "Mom, the government's out there again." You know, the teenagers, you know, saying, "Mom, the government's out there," and you know and to this day, they talk about it. They remember it all, and they're a little afraid, you know, that I'm getting back into this because they remember the harassment and how stressed out I was. I was really stressed. I was so stressed out that I changed my name, moved to another state. I did all kinds of things, you know, that would make it look like I wasn't into this at all anymore. I really changed everything about my life. And I have to tell you, and I'm actually glad you asked this question because it allows me to say this: getting away from the remote viewing community was honestly the absolute best thing that could have ever happened to me in terms of my understanding of remote viewing, how to do it, what it is, what the potential applications are. Getting away from that community literally saved my remote viewing life, and it allowed me to dive deeper into a more interesting level with it and to kind of discard everything that I thought I knew about it. So, you know, I had come from the military. I mean, I wasn't in the military myself, but I came from that tradition, learning SRV, scientific remote viewing, which was Courtney Brown's Farsight Institute's version of CRV, controlled remote viewing, that the military developed. And honest to God, they're both exactly the same thing. They do have a little bit different nomenclature, but it's really the same thing. And then you look at, different other schools, and people have modified the protocols, but they all kind of look the same. And getting away from that allowed me to truly think about every single portion of the protocol, and what's real and what isn't real, and what are we really doing here. And if you look at the field of remote viewing in general, this is really important, guys, so listen to this. So you have today, if you look at it today, you have a number of scientists, such as Gary Nolan, people at Duke University, and others, who are trying to figure out scientifically what the basis of consciousness is, and by extension, what remote viewing is, right? I think that's super, super, super important work. Absolutely. And then you have a number of remote viewers who are trying to push the envelope and coming up with new ways to task things, target things, looking at relationships between things when you task and target. There's a lot of conversations around that. I think all of that's really cool too. I love everything everyone's doing, and I applaud absolutely everyone who is in this field, who's stuck with it. But what I did is somewhere in between there. Over the past 20 something years, this is what I did. So, and this is a huge thing. I thought about what you do when you produce a remote viewing session. And I thought about the language. So for those of you who have never done remote viewing, if you're doing it in one of those traditions, this is how you do it. You sit down with a pen and paper, and you start with a series of doodles called ideograms, and you start coming up with, you do this blind, usually, it doesn't have to be. So you don't know what you're viewing, but somebody else does. They give you Niagara Falls, typical beginner target, right? And so you might draw some squiggles that look like water falling down a mountain. You might draw a chaotic squiggle that we would refer to energy. And then as you go through the session, you describe more and more, and then your sketches become more and more pronounced. And by the end of the session, you can look at your body of work, and you can see, if you look at everything, that it's a waterfall, and it's something that's maybe between two countries, Canada and the United States, right? And you get all of this different data. But one thing that bothered me from the get-go, that bothered me from day one, and this is what I really put my attention on, is that data in a remote viewing session, sometimes people think is wrong. They think, well, that's off, but you got this right. And so sometimes, if you have what they call a high level thought, like you think you know what the target is, you write it off on the side. And in CRV tradition, they call that an analytic overlay, an AOL. Okay. And in SRV and Courtney Brown's tradition, they call that a deduction or a stray cat. Right. And so I decided that I would start looking at sessions and think about, well, what happens if every single piece of data is actually real? And that kind of has spurred my research for over 20 years, because I believe that that's true. I think every single piece of data in a session is 100% real. And what you need to do is you need to discover what you yourself as the viewer, how your mind truly works in a situation. You have to analyze your own mind and analyze. And so I have been training people, secretly over these past years. And what I make these people do is go through after disclosure, after they know that it's Niagara Falls, they have to go through and justify every single piece of data. So if they get something that doesn't seem like it's the target, they have to explain why they wrote that down. And the more that these remote viewers started to understand their own minds and why they were writing this, then the next session they would do, then they would realize, oh, I'm getting those same feelings, and their next data was more directly relevant and not obfuscated by layers of their own ideas about things. And this is an incredible, incredible exercise for anyone interested in remote viewing. It changes the ball game. It changes how you look at remote viewing. And in a week or so, couple weeks, I'm going to be on Daz's remote viewing talk thingamabob. And when I'm on there, I'm going to talk about an AI application that I've written. I'm currently in a graduate artificial intelligence program, getting my PhD in artificial intelligence. And I'm really great at writing applications. And I have this amazing analytics AI that I've written. And I'm going to be talking about that on his show because it's way too technical for this discussion. But anyway, so when you're remote, I know I'm all over the map here, but this is important stuff, guys. When you're remote viewing, you have to trust that every single piece of data is real. The second you tell yourself, upon reflection, looking at your data after you're given what the target is, the second that you tell yourself, oh, I got that wrong, is the second that you're losing something essential as a remote viewer. It's way better to look at all your data and say, how is everything here correct? It makes your next session a million times better and all your following sessions a million times better. So I don't even know if I'm explaining this right because I'm kind of all over the map, but that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. I'm telling everyone they're 100% correct and I'm proving it.
Yeah, well, your justification of the data sounds to me very much like learning how to decipher your own dream symbols in your dreams. Like, what does this tell me?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It all originates from that same place inside of us, right? So absolutely.
Yeah, I was actually going in a different direction with that question, but I like your answer better, so I'll just stop you there. Thank you, Birdie.
Thank you.
Okay, Andrew, you're next. Put your hand up.
Hi, Birdie.
Hey.
Are you willing to describe some of the experiences you might have had in dealing with what would be categorized as spirits, or as you've classified them, outside influences, particularly during your remote viewing sessions? Also, is this something that is like a regular occurrence for you? And do you know how to initiate these experiences, or is it just like spontaneous?
Okay, well, that is a very complicated question. So let's break it down. So when you're remote viewing, you might feel that there's an outside presence. I mean, many remote viewers have experienced this and they'll write it down on their paper. And I'm just going to make an aside here. I don't even use paper and pen hardly at all anymore in remote viewing. I have other methods of remote viewing that are more 3D oriented, full body oriented. We use a lot of clay. We use a lot of 3D body space, and we record our sessions instead of writing them down because I believe that it facilitates a more full response. So anyway, get that out of the paper. Let's go back to the paper and pen and talk about remote viewing as you guys are doing it. So sometimes, and this is more apparent in what we term esoteric targets. And for those of you that, I'm sorry for everybody, this is turning into a more technical remote viewing discussion, and I apologize. But when you're remote viewing, an esoteric target is something that is either, it's something that isn't defined as what we know today. Okay, so it's not something in the past, like, Napoleon on the battlefield, and it's not something today like Mount Rushmore at this moment. It's something that could be in the future. It could be an alien target, like the aliens, communicating with aliens on another planet, or the crash at Roswell and those little guys and whatever, right? So an esoteric target almost always, not always, but a lot of times involves communication with a species, an individual or a group of individuals who has this ability to translate consciousness in ways that we as humans have a more difficult time translating. So you can get a message or be nudged by something that isn't your own body. That's something that is, an alien, for example. Or if you're looking at somebody who's died, sometimes you get their spirit in there, and sometimes you get random people. This is a very easy thing to identify when you're remote viewing. It's not yourself. It's a communication coming from someplace, and it's not necessarily another human. Maybe it's a dead person. Maybe it's an alien. Maybe it's something completely different. I mean, I've had all kinds of strange experiences as a remote viewer communicating with these things. And you know, it's your choice. It's your choice in a session to have a conversation or not. And that's one thing I try to tell students these days is it's your choice. You don't have to have this conversation. You can tell them, no thanks. You can say, go away. You can, you know, you can stop communication, or you can welcome it. Generally, I welcome it because I want to know what other people are thinking out there on other worlds, right? Or in other levels, planes of existence. It's always exciting to me. It doesn't scare me. But sometimes it can feel a little scary. I have had a couple of sessions in the past where, and these were targets that in which I was looking at things that are extraordinarily esoteric, things like, you know, the creation of the universe, things like this, where I did have some very specific things told to me that I felt were unsettling. And those kind of sat with me for a while because it didn't feel normal. I don't mean didn't feel normal in that it felt bad. It just was so unhuman or so unusual that I bristled a little bit, you know, I was a little afraid. And, but I generally dive into things head first and try to get as much info as I could. I don't even know if I'm answering your question here, Andrew. Keep going if I'm not. Ask me some more. Ask me in a different way if I'm not.
I know that those videos from 2000 are really old and everything, but it almost appeared in watching you, because I was paying such close attention. They were great. It looked like at one point in there you were being influenced, and it wasn't unfriendly or anything. And I just saw that and wondered, is that like a regular thing for you? And, you know, how much contact do you have? And you just consider it outside influence, or, you know, I just wondered if that was like regular for you, and if there was a way that you knew how to sort of initiate that yourself, or if it was just spontaneous.
You can absolutely initiate it, especially if you're looking at an esoteric target. You can absolutely say that, you know, you can dive in at any point and say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. If you recognize that there is some kind of conscious being there, you can do that with a human being too, at any particular target. Heck, you can do it if you're looking at, you know, at just a simple target like someone's wedding event or whatever. You can have a conversation with anyone in there. It's up to you to initiate that conversation, and they'll let you know if they're open to it or not. And sometimes you might get not necessarily a conversation, but you might get a sense of who that person is on a more deeper level. I mean, they used to call it back at Farsight a deep mind probe. I always like that terminology. That's so Courtney. But, you know, you can absolutely have a conversation with any sentient being, with any animal. I have had conversations with cows, insects even. You'd be surprised the sentience of all kinds of different things out in the universe, and even on our own planet, things maybe we are not that quite aware of. But yeah, you can initiate a conversation. You don't have to let it take over your session or let it take over yourself or your sense of self. So it's just all comes down to experience and practice and training.
Okay, should we move on? We got 7 people with hands up, Birdie. You're very popular. We have John Knowles and then Carrie.
The first thing I'd like to say is, hi, Birdie.
Hey, John, been a long time.
It's only been 21 years.
I know.
And
hey, John was one of the OGs here, guys.
For folks who don't know, so I went to contact in the desert with some other folks, and Birdie popped by our table, and apparently I didn't look up enough to say hello to her. And I did see you someone wandering around the place that kind of looked like you, but 21 years later, I guess my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. And
I'm better looking now. That's why I surprised you.
Well, now that I hear your voice, I mean, it's obvious it's you, and you still have that same energy and drive, and you're getting a PhD in AI. Holy crow, this woman is amazing. So I can definitely vouch for everything she said about the past, the parts that I know, because I was the training coordinator in the last 6 months.
Hey,
before
John
we
was
had to
there.
shut
He was
down.
there. He experienced all this stuff. He was absolutely there. And he has done amazing things since. So you guys should look him up and see and get his book on ARV. I know I was not dissing your book, John. I wasn't. I'm just not personally doing the lottery, but John has written a book about using ARV for the lottery, and he has had some amazing success in it. So definitely check his stuff out. He's super cool guy, and he is involved. He's been involved in remote viewing all these years. So bring on your question, John. Don't you want to win the book and the honey?
Before I ask the question, I do have one question, but I wanted to say also, I was so excited that you're into UFOs. Now, I've been believing in the reality of UFOs since 1952. That's true. That's when the big flap over DC. So I followed UFOs, and I've also written an article that's in Nexus magazine on the connection between UFOs and remote viewing. And I also presented on that at the URBA conference in 2023. So I'm also into UFOs, not as much as Birdie, but still quite a bit. And I've looked into actually using remote viewing for UFOs too. And as I just told Birdie, I consulted with 5 people at the Seoul conference in the fall, Jacques Vallée and Targ and all these people. The only one that said, yeah, go for it, was John Alexander, who's a colonel and has been in both the remote viewing and UFO field for a long time. The others were cautious. About Jacques Vallée said, well, we don't know enough about either one, so you really shouldn't mix them. I didn't say, well, Birdie says we should and can. And then Russell Targ also said, we don't know enough about either one to mix them. So I had some interesting conversations at the Seoul conference in the fall, which just Gary Nolan had sponsored, who Prue mentioned. All right, so my question, Birdie, is there was a big event that we were supposed to experience back in the day, 20 some years ago. We did dozens of sessions on the big event that was going to affect our group, and we would be into the public eye, and it was going to be very important. And as far as I know, the big event didn't happen. So I'm curious what your take on that is.
Well, at the time, when we were doing analysis on all those sessions, so everybody, I got to give some background here because this is actually super interesting. At the time, when we would look at the idea of disclosure, of UFO disclosure, and this was, 25 years ago, gang. And of course, we haven't had mass disclosure yet. We've had little disclosure, soft disclosure, perhaps, but not, we haven't had the president of the United States come out and say we are not alone. And we were looking at when this would happen. And we saw a series of things that would unfold. First, the first thing that would unfold would be a group of researchers and scientists that would start making their work public, talking about the UFO phenomenon. And this has been happening. So I think that, that I'm seeing all that we remote viewed back in those days coming to pass. But then we also saw a big event. And this big event was what was going to spur the whole disclosure process. And the big event, and I'm not going to get into all the specifics of it because I have a lot of specifics on this, but I will talk about this later at some point in time. I'm actually doing a big project on it myself right now. But the big event is a big, huge event that humans cannot deny, and that disclosure would absolutely have to happen knowing about this big event. And so one of the things that we did look at the time, and I didn't make this public, but we were looking at dates for this. And at the time, I had a kind of a different idea on how to determine dates through remote viewing than I would today, but I still think it was probably pretty accurate because we were getting something around the year 2030, something 2025, 2030, 2035. And at the time I thought, holy crap, that's so far away. It can't be that far away, right? And now here I am, and here it is this time. And if you look, actually, this is a good question, John, because if you look at the whole disclosure process, it's fascinating. Why did it start unfolding in 2017 with those articles in the New York Times and Lou Elizondo's important work in all of this? And why has it ramped up now with the Schumer-Rounds amendment in Congress? Why? are they pushing for it so fast? And the Schumer-Rounds Amendment, gives a very limited time frame. So to me, it shows that they are ramping up, that they have to have disclosure, because after decades of no disclosure and keeping us in the dark, they could have kept that going forever, honest to God, right? Because the UFO phenomenon itself has not been making itself known so publicly to us. It's been kept on the individual level. People have their own experiences. People have, they see things in the sky. Maybe they take a picture or two. It doesn't come out that great. And so I think that the disclosure process is truly been pushed forward in our recent years because they know that this big event is happening. And other people have come out and talked about this. I don't know if you guys have heard of ex-CIA guy, John Ramirez. He's throwing out 2027. Leslie Kane, writer for the New York Times, has also thrown out 2027 due to her sources, whoever they are. There's a number of people that are coming up with kind of similar numbers to what we talked about back then. So yeah, John, the big event's coming. It just hasn't happened yet. I'm absolutely 100%
just to be clear,
convinced.
just to be clear, at the time, we thought it was going to affect our group, which would play a central role.
I still think it's going to affect those in remote viewing. And, because most of us are still involved. We're just involved in different ways,
okay,
right?
Well, we'll
and,
see. We'll
see. Hey,
all right.
I believe.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll talk
My
to you
pleasure.
soon,
Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Next is Carrie and then John. Okay, Carrie.
Hey, Birdie.
Hey.
So happy to be here and meet you finally.
So glad you're here. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm into UFOs, been my whole entire life, and RV, of course. I got a question, which wanted to combine UFOs and RV at the same time. However, it hasn't happened to me on a continuing basis.
Okay.
But people that I know and talk to, when they try to remote view certain things, they seem to get kicked out or blocked with UFOs or big targets that powers that be, and I'm not saying who or what powers that be, block them from seeing certain things. They get kicked out or they see another person in their sessions. Do you have any experience with that?
Yes, I do. I had a lot more experience with that.
Yeah, well,
some time ago. And I think that sometimes I think that you're blocked because whatever you're trying to look at doesn't want you to have that experience, right? So, and usually if you're blocked, it's almost always something involving, a higher intelligence of some sort, an alien, or, it's usually something that can block you. And it's very much unlikely just another human being. Although that does happen if you're remote viewing some of the secret government remote viewing programs.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you, don't look at those. or do have some fun and do. But the more that you involve yourself deeply kind of in this process of self-discovery that I was talking about earlier, and understanding who you are. And I'll talk about this kind of at the end, because this is really what my focus is on now, that the more open you are and the more that these other kind of entities out there are more willing to have a conversation with you, because you understand yourself better than kind of a typical human being. You're not going to make a rash emotional decision about how you're going to handle this interaction, if that makes sense. It's a really good question. And so I think that if you feel blocked, you can handle it in a couple of different ways. And in any of these ways is completely acceptable. You can accept the block and try to work around it or move forward or stop the session. That's completely acceptable. Or if you feel blocked, this is what I do these days. If I ever feel a block, is I go ahead and I just say, okay, I'm going to give you a moment here and I'm going to try again. And then I try again. And then I, just put out some gentle feelers and I say, okay, well, what will you tell me? Or what are you comfortable with? Or is it okay if I ask you this? And if you start asking softer questions like that, usually you can kind of get a little thread in, and it makes the information easier to pull out. Because sometimes I think that our human energy is chaotic. It's a little rough compared to some of these other entities out there. We are the Wild West of the psychic world. Let me tell you, we don't know what we're doing. We're coming in with our guns blazing and we're trying to figure out everything. And that isn't always the best approach. So it often is good to just kind of worm your way in a little bit, be gentle and say, okay, well, can you at least tell me what color you are? Or do you have a name? Or, hey, is it warm or cold where you are? Come up with a question that's outside of the box. And often that is your way in. So, hey, have you ever heard of spaghetti? I mean, I ask the most ridiculous questions sometimes if I feel unblocked, and usually that works, because on the other side, that being, that individual or whatever they are, collective, they're like, what? They're not afraid. They want to, what the heck is spaghetti? I mean, come up with a silly question. And oftentimes that usually is enough to let someone else's guard down. Or maybe what's really happening is you're letting your own guard down enough to see what's actually there. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. If that answers your question, I don't know.
Yeah, like do baby steps, go softer.
Baby steps, exactly. And in this whole equation, we're the babies. We don't know what the heck we're doing in this field. We're just all trying new things, trying to get there. We are in our infancy of being cosmic, immaculate, wonderful beings. We are just little infants, and it's really cool. I kind of like it that we're babies here. This is exciting, super exciting.
So you don't feel a need that if you get blocked, you don't feel a need that you need psychic protection?
Never. I used to do all the protective stuff, and nah, we're just all beings in this amazing, incredible universe, or other universes if you're remote viewing other universes. And I don't feel a need for any of that at all anymore. I just, maybe because I have built up some inner strength. I don't know. I'm not saying that you should not do any protection,
No, I
or
totally understand.
at all. That for myself, I'm only answering as myself here. I don't feel I need it at all. I'm just open and happy. I'm always happy. I think that being happy is an important part of the equation here, to
Right.
get in and find things out.
Yeah, I had an experience that was unbelievable at one point, and it was cold in his house, and then it just turned to love, and my body heated up like I was under heated blankets from what I perceived was other beings from another planet. But yeah, okay.
See, that's beautiful. How amazing is that? Just think about that. How cool is that? Like, if you went out to the grocery store today and you told everyone in the grocery store, I had this amazing experience, and you described that, they'd all think you're nuts.
Well, yeah, but the people that
and it's real.
Yeah.
That's what I want us to bring to this world, is to let everyone know that these things are real. All these things are real. We can have these amazing experiences. We can discover what's happening out there on other worlds, in other dimensions, and in other universes. Even we can figure out all of this. How cool is that? We're amazing. You guys are amazing. We can all do it.
I was crying like a baby when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That was one experience.
That was beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Okay, so next we got John McClard. And then Chris. Hi, John. There you
Hi,
go.
Birdie. I had a question for you. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. What your thoughts were with your remote viewing of the future. What do you think the odds are that those particular things will come true? And I mean specifically when you're looking for a future event, what do you think the odds are that those things are going to come true? And as a second part to that, I'm curious if when you have multiple remote viewers reviewing that event, do they affect it? Can they change it because they're viewing it? That's my question.
Those
Thank
are
you.
great questions, John. Great questions. So, there are a lot of theories about looking at the future and whether or not when we look at the future, if we're looking at a probability or not, right? And I think that to some degree we are. I think that when you look at the future, some things are fixed because of the weight of the past. And the more that I've got, I've been doing remote viewing for 30 years now. And the more that I've gotten into remote viewing, I can feel that difference now. And I couldn't 20 years ago, but I can now. So if I'm remote viewing something in the future and it's going to absolutely happen, I know it's going to happen. And if I'm looking at something in the future and maybe it's going to happen, it's still, there's still eddies of possibility around it. I can feel that too. So, yeah, you can see both, but I think it takes somebody who's very experienced, especially in looking at futuristic stuff and in understanding their own data and understanding, their own mind and what they're getting to be able to figure that out. So yeah, I don't think that the future is fixed. I think that there are eddies of possibility and probability, but I do think that an experienced remote viewer can tell the difference. And by experienced, I mean someone who has a deep knowledge of their own relationship to the data that they produce. And I'll be talking about this extensively with Daz when we do that show, because that's kind of like my whole thing. But anyway, so the second part of your question was, okay, remind me again. I'm losing the train here, gang.
I'm sorry to do a two-parter.
No.
The remote viewers affect
Oh, yeah. Okay.
the event that's happening because they're remote viewing it?
Yeah, you affect everything. I mean, heck, even the Pope, Pope Frankie these days, he has even said you can pray for people in the past and affect their life in the past. Absolutely. You can whatever you put your I'm just admitting someone else here. Whatever you put your attention to in the future or in the past or in the present, yes, you're affecting it because all of a sudden you become part of that tableau. So even if you're thinking about, I mean, this is kind of the basis of how your thoughts affect reality, just generally. There's a whole huge industry out there, huge positive thinking industry. Well, the reason that industry exists is because it's real. The more that you think positively about your own future or your own past, even, the more your life becomes in alignment. And this is true for any event in the past and even in the future. So if you're looking at something way in the past, you're affecting it by the nature of being there. So one of the things that I do tell remote viewers today that I work with, and I've worked with a number of people solo in recent years, and I do try to tell them that when you're remote viewing something, especially like in the past, for example, and say I give them a really horrific target, because every once in a while it's good to give someone a shock, right? So you give them a nuclear bombing, or you give them a really horrific war situation or a disaster. You tell them when you are experiencing something like this, it is important to, once you recognize that it is a disaster or it is a really horrible thing, or you feel that people are suffering, to envelop that with as much love as you can, because that does change the nature of that event. So the more that we remote view terrible things in the past, the more we could change our past to be something more beautiful. And we wouldn't even know that it's been changed because it would have been changed, right? And we can do the same for the future. We can make our future better by remote viewing it and enveloping it with love and intention. I mean, intention is like been my thing for 30 years, right? And I truly believe that we can be such a force for beauty and good in this universe in all directions, the past, the present, the future, going through different dimensions, everything. Absolutely. That's a great question, John. Thank you.
Okay.
Whoa, it's really raining out here. We're getting a thunderstorm here in Albuquerque. Woo!
Oh, exciting. So
Yeah.
next we have Chris up and then Michelle. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
I'm up in Pennsylvania. It's not raining now, but it was. Anyway.
Oh, it's pouring here.
So I guess I had like a question and kind of a mini question. So I guess my one question is kind of like it's kind of more of a personal pet project is like throughout your experience, or maybe even UFO or UAP, but like did you see any connection with like Neanderthals? That's I mean, this is something I'm very slowly nibbling at over the years, but I kind of think there's something there. There's something there. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if you did any sessions. I actually did an ERV session, like it wasn't really ERV, it was kind of ERV many years ago. And like, I kind of came face to face with what I think was a Neanderthal. And ever since then, I kind of got this kind of feeling, but I haven't really explored too much into it, but I thought maybe if you had any insight in that, because they're kind of related to us. I don't know if they saw UFOs or if those are.
Hey, they're super related to us. So have you ever had your DNA done?
No.
Okay, I did. I had my DNA done. I figured the government already had it, so why the hell not, right? So had my DNA done, and I'm 3% Neanderthal, so.
That's high. Usually people are 1 or 2%.
I know. I was like higher than average. So I don't know. What does that mean? I do not know, but yeah, I have looked at them as a species in the past, and they were way more interesting, I think, I think that scientists today think they were probably pretty darn interesting. They had religion. They had all kinds of, sophisticated language and sophisticated, living situations. They were an interesting species. And I think that they were a little more psychic than we were, honestly. I really do.
And other people do that too. There's no proof of that. There's not yet evidence of that.
Hey,
but
this is the thing. Guys. Remote viewing is proof. I'm so sick of people saying we still have to prove remote viewing to the masses. Oh, no, we don't. It's just darn real, and we do it every day. Everybody does it every single day. When someone's looking at you, you think of your sister and the phone rings, or there's like a million things that happen in the course of every single day of our human lives where we are remote viewing. It is as real as anything. I am such an RV evangelist.
My mini question is, I have 4 kids, and I want to get to. My oldest is 16. I get them listening to some Hemisync, because I did a couple sessions. I did a couple like little try this out sessions. I gave him a little list of the steps to do. He was all right. The first one was pretty good. The second one, well, it was a bad target. It was my fault, but he kind of faulted on the second one. But like, what are your thoughts on like that? Like, not so much a teacher, but like if you're a parent and you want to get your kids into it, maybe not hardcore, but just get them a taste of it,
Oh man, back in the day. This is awful, but okay, this actually isn't awful. It's kind of cool. So one of my kids, my son, and he was about 16 at the time, and he took one of my full 5-day classes, and he actually got super freaked out during it. I don't know if any of you guys remember that, who might have been there, but he was amazing, too amazing. He still talks about it to this day. And now he's the father to my 10-year-old granddaughter. And my granddaughter came and spent a week with me last week. And she was really, oh my gosh, that girl is so into UFOs, you have no idea. And really into all this stuff. And she wanted to learn more about it. So I taught her a little bit of remote viewing, and I had her do cool down, listen to some beautiful hemi-sync type music, the binaural music that I like. And I had her do some of the exercises that I now train people in. And she would remote view all of your socks off. There was absolutely no question. She's 10 years old. I think that the younger generation should be taught these skills. I think that they're going to be invaluable skills for our kids. And I hope more people get involved in teaching younger folks how to do these things. I think it can only help.
Well, Chris, you can unmute yourself. There was just some background noise. You can come back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Again, I got 4 kids and I'm probably making some noise. But yeah, thank you, Birdie. That was awesome.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
Okay, Michelle, are you there? You
I'm
can
here.
You can turn on your
Yay!
camera if you want to show
Michelle
yourself.
is my friend, my dear friend.
Oh, and I'm drinking margaritas in my pajamas. You don't want to see me.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
I have my pajama bottoms on right now, guys, but I'm only drinking sparkling water because I got to keep my wits about me during this.
I'm also eating tamales. You'll just be jealous. So,
I'm totally jealous. I want a tamale so bad.
well, I will get you one sometime, my
Thank
dear.
you.
All right. And my question is similar to Carrie's, but I already had it written down, so I'm just going to go ahead.
Yeah.
I was wanting to know, do you think that other entities, and not just like aliens, but like dimensional beings, intercept or change or block remote viewing sessions or show different probabilities, even in other multiverses that are perhaps similar, but a different verse if we really knew?
Yes. I mean, yes. I mean, I have been blocked in the past by different kinds of entities, and it's usually, I mean, at this point, in this day and time, in my old age here and in my level of experience, the only times I ever feel kind of blocked is if I'm looking at things that are really, really, really high vibrational, I'll say, like if you're looking at like the architects of the universe or things that are kind of beyond the veil in a way. And those kinds of entities may still provide some level of blocking to me, but I can get under the curtain by asking really simple questions and just kind of coming in through the back door. But I think that people who are newer remote viewers and who aren't used to these kinds of energies, that they may, well, they do find themselves blocked more than somebody who has a lot of experience. And I have a lot of experience because I've been remote viewing. Oh my gosh, I've been remote viewing so much. There was one time when I spent three months. This was some years back now, a few years ago. I bought this package at a place that does the sensory deprivation tanks, and I remote viewed twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. I would go and lay for an hour in a sensory deprivation tank and do a session. And that was some of the most intense sessions I've ever done, times a million. That was an incredible experience. And I keep thinking I got to do this again because it was amazing. But anyway, I just threw that in there. But yeah, being blocked, I think, is part of the learning process until you learn how to get past those blocks. And usually getting past the blocks is more about understanding your own internal dialogue than it is what's actually coming from these other entities. It's really more about you than it is about them, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I understand. Do you think they actually change, though, what we see because they're intercepting when people are trying to remote view out there and showing us even different probabilities, like multiple probabilities?
Yes, that can happen. And the more that you have experience with entities like that, the more you can understand when it's a screen that they're showing you, because it has a certain flavor to it. And different people experience that flavor in different ways. It may look a certain way to you, or it may feel a certain way, may even smell a certain way or sound a different way. But those kinds of screens you can identify, but I think it takes somebody who's pretty experienced to get there. Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you, Birdie.
Thanks, Michelle. See you Saturday.
See you, hon.
Yeah. I've got a couple of questions from the chat. Dennis asks, what were you supposed to be viewing when you came up with the Twin Towers?
The next terror attack on the United States. And this was a blind target. I didn't know what I was viewing. So just given coordinate numbers. And it was the next terror attack in the United States. And this was, I viewed this in 1998. And this was after 1993, when there was a small bomb that was set off, or that they found in the Twin Towers. So this was after that event, but I didn't know what I was viewing. It could have been anything. We were looking at all kinds of stuff in those days, but it was the next terror attack in the United States, and that's what I got.
Okay. Another question in chat is, do eclipses affect the viewing experience?
I think that they affect the mind of the viewer, but not the experience itself. I think that any kind of strange or unusual event, I've remote viewed in, I mean, you know, we have limited opportunity to remote view during solar eclipses, but during lunar eclipses multiple times. And honestly, you just, oh, hold on a second. You can probably hear that. We have a flash flood warning. Hold on a second, guys. Let me turn this off. Yeah, it's raining in New Mexico. The streets are going to be flooded. Sorry about that. Eclipses. So,
Eclipses.
so yeah, so you can, you might feel kind of creepy, but it doesn't affect the viewing, really.
Okay, that's fine. So we can move on. Jamie's next, and then Sean.
Hello.
Do you want your camera on, Jamie? Just...
No, I'm laying in bed and it's dark in here.
Okay. Okay.
There, yeah, I will not remote view you, I promise, Jamie.
Probably for the best. Way back before podcasts were a thing, you and John Vivanco had the Larger Universe internet radio show. Is there any chance of bringing that back, you guys? And
oh my gosh,
is there any way to find recordings of the originals that you're aware of?
Yeah, I have everything. I have all the sessions from the Larger Universe. I have like everything in my archives. It's really crazy. I've been, I don't know what I'm going to pull out publicly or not at this point, but I know, I mean, John's kind of on his path and doing different stuff, and we might, I don't know if we'll do stuff together or not. I mean, he's my dear friend, and I think it'd be super fun to do a project with him and to do something, but I know he's kind of got his own things that he's doing these days. And my focus is a little different than his these days, but what I plan to do, just might as well just let everybody know here, is I'm not going to get back into teaching. I am teaching 2 classes, one in August, one in October, 5-day classes. And I don't think I'm going to teach past that. I'm looking for I have a few people already who are going to be in my operational group, and I'm looking for a few more. I don't want a big group. I'm mostly looking for people who are really interested in kind of exploring the boundaries of remote viewing and exploring the boundaries of our human potential, and engaging in more communication with what's out there. And by out there, I mean our UFO friends, right? So that's what I really want to focus on. And I'm going to do a lecture series to bring everybody up to speed on all the things that I have been working on for the past 20 plus years. It's going to be totally available for free. I'm going to do it over Zoom, so you guys can ask me questions during it. They'll all be on my Meetup page. So the way you guys found this, you can, as I announce those, and then I will archive them at my private website, which is norivets.com, NORIVETS.com. You can sign up now. And so then when things get uploaded, you can find them. And that's going to be my personal site. You can also find out all I'm doing with my UFO group at abqufos.com. We have an extraordinarily crazy, vibrant UFO group. Anyway, so I might put some stuff at No Rivets, some of the old school stuff. I might do that. So that's a good question. I'll think about that. Yeah, we did some crazy stuff back in the days. And what I'm doing now is even crazier. So stay tuned.
Can't wait. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, you're next.
Hi, Birdie. Hey, I just had a question about all the interference that we get from radio waves and 5G and all that. Does that have a big influence on remote viewing and success at remote viewing?
I
And
think.
do you ever
go
go
ahead.
inside like well, you talked about sensory deprivation, but even like what do you call it, like a Faraday cage or
Faraday
something like
cage,
that?
yeah. Okay, so that's a really good question, Paul. That's actually a really good question. So I do think that all of these outside things, they do influence us to some degree. I think that someone who is very practiced, whether it's through meditation or through a lifetime of remote viewing practice, is less susceptible because you recognize when those things are at play, right? So, but they do affect people. They can affect anyone. I did have the most intense sessions of my life doing a sensory deprivation chamber for 3 months, solid. I was like in an altered state for months afterward. I kid you not. I was walking around just like seeing stuff everywhere and experiencing things and hearing things, and they were all real. That was amazing. So yeah, I do think that if you can block all that out, you're going to have a deeper experience for sure. I mean, that's why meditation practice works, right? And you're doing a cool down, listening to the binaural music, all that kind of stuff. It really does help set you up so that you have a more effective experience. A Faraday cage, absolutely, is another way to provide an interesting experience. I don't think you need these tools. I think that they can provide an incredible experience. I think that the experience that they provide is even more incredible if you are experienced and you understand yourself. That process of self-exploration, that's what I'm going to be working on with my new operational group is, and we're not going to do splashy stuff out there. I know that there are other groups that are putting up all kinds of cool projects that they've been working on and this and that. I'm not going to be doing that with my group. I just want the people in my group to really want to know things, and we're going to just work on things quietly, because I think that the second you invite the world in is the second that you kind of look for answers outside yourself. And I want us to be really focused. So that's another, to answer your question in another kind of a way, I think that having a good, deep internal focus is really important. And if anyone here is really interested, you're into remote viewing, you want to know more about what I'm doing, you're maybe interested in joining my operational group, you send me a message through my site or Birdie at abqufos.com and tell me about who you are and what you're doing. I'm only teaching twice in August and in October for 5 days. Those classes are full. And I've got over 300 people now on the waiting list for those classes.
Wow.
And I'm not charging, I'm only charging expenses, just what it costs to put me on. I'm not making any money on this. I'm not making money on anything I'm doing. Everything I'm doing is for free, for the good of humanity, because it's what I believe in these days. I don't know. I want to have a purity about my research and my intentions and my thoughts in this. So I'm keeping it quiet on the down low. I'm not going to be an RV personality out there. I'm doing a couple little interviews right now, and I'm not going to be a personality anymore. And that's not because of the government interference. It's because I have this idea about the integrity of it. And I'm more interested in my UFO group and stuff. In my remote viewing, I'm keeping separate and beautiful and just interesting. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Sean's next.
Man, I just have to say,
Yeah.
a lot of great questions. I don't know who's going to win the book and the honey yet, but I've got a couple contenders in my head.
Okay, Sean.
Hey, Birdie.
Hey, there
Actually,
he is, my friend from ABQ UFOs.
I'm actually coming to you live from Roswell.
No way.
And you're checking it out. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
exciting.
yeah. It's very cool down here. I have two questions, kind of. One's kind of a fun one because, everything's fresh in my mind from Roswell. Um,
Yeah.
have you remote viewed, they talk about different types of non-human intelligences. Have you ever experienced different types of them?
Yes, I have experienced so many different types of non-human intelligences. I can't even count how many. I mean, and I've had personal encounters too. Most people here know about all my UFO experiences, but I have had, as a remote viewer, remote viewed grays, remote viewed the reptilians, and there's multiple different kinds of reptilians, the mantids, the Nordics, I mean, you name it. If they're a known alien entity, I've remote viewed them, and I have remote viewed so many more. In most of these cases, it has involved some kind of communication back to me too. It's really, really interesting. Um, just how amazing these conversations can be. They'll tell you all kinds of interesting stuff, not only about us as human beings, but about what they're doing here, what they hope for us, what they plan for us. And it's it's really beautiful most of the time. Yeah, sometimes it's a little scary. Sometimes you may have an encounter with a non-human intelligence and remote viewing that isn't the kindest or the most wonderful, and they're a little creepy, and you think, well, I really don't want these people on my planet, but here they are. So you have to figure out, well, how can we make it work? How can we make it work? It's it's like being the United Nations. So absolutely, Sean, we have many, many conversations, and that's what I'm doing. So those of you, I know some of you here are signed up for my 5-day class coming up. Those of you in my 5-day class, that is like the last couple of days of class. We're going to go heavy into the alien communications. So it's going to be super exciting.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I also hope to someday take part in one of those. And then my second question is more serious, but and it might have already been answered, I think, thinking back, but how do you think remote viewing can further or impact the disclosure effort as it is currently unfolding?
I think that there are a number of ways that remote viewing can help understand, at least, and impact the disclosure process. First of all, if you look now, if you remote view right now, what's actually happening with disclosure. And I don't know if anyone here has been looking at this. I've done this extensively, and one of the things that is happening is that there is a need for disclosure. They're not just disclosing because they feel like they want to right now. They're disclosing because they have to. And so you have to ask yourself why. What's going to happen, or why are they disclosing this now? And that's one thing you can do with remote viewing. We're going to talk about that extensively in the classes I'm teaching, and I'm going to write about that too, put it up on my website. But the other thing too you can do in terms of disclosure is actually have conversations with these different non-human intelligences and try to understand what they're doing in terms of disclosure, because it's not a one-way street. It's not simply us as humanity determining when the rest of humanity should know that we are not alone. It's not, President Biden or whoever the next president is going to be saying we are not alone. It's not a one-way street. The other intelligences have a say in this. They absolutely have a say. There's no question that when this happens, that it's not okay with them. There's no question. So you can use remote viewing to understand what's happening in that arena too.
Thanks for sharing that. And I just wanted to
Yeah.
say thank you for doing what you do and for keeping these resources available for all of us. I think it's really important.
Sean. Okay,
Thank you.
Sean. Hey, Sean, pimp out your site that you've been working on. Tell everyone about it.
Oh yeah. I have a site called UFOtransparency.com, or it's UFO-transparency.com. And I mean it to be like a resource for just anyone to tap into podcasts, videos, kind of you name it type site. It's in the works. I work too much, so I've been having trouble finding time to work on it. But I actually was just working on it as we were listening to this, so it's getting up there. But yeah, it's UFO transparency on Instagram. Yeah, thanks, Birdie.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sean's in my ABQ UFOs group. Woo! Go Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark Turner, you're back.
Woo!
Yes, thanks again. Yeah, and I have to say, Sean pretty much read my mind on that first question. That like took out like half the stuff I was just about to ask. So that's an amazing little bit of telepathy there you did, Sean. We've heard you talk about UFO, like non-human intelligence, aliens, what have you, blocking you. We've heard about some unfriendly entities that you've encountered, but I remember in one of the previous talks you had with Brian and in a Q&A session, you talked about this beautiful civilization that you remote viewed and this amazing life out there. And it sort of gave me chill bumps too, hearing you say that. There are a lot of people out there, and let me just say, if you want to talk about that more, that's awesome. But my overall question is, there are a lot of people out there that see threats every time you bring up aliens or ETs and they're here to invade and all this. And that's, I'm an experiencer. That's not the impression I get at all. And I know that you're an experiencer. You've also done a lot of remote viewing work on this stuff. You've got a better perspective on a lot of this. So what do you say to those people out there that just see a threat everywhere they look when we're talking about these others?
Oh, Mark, what a great question. You know what? Yeah, sure. There is the occasional, alien goober out there that wants to overtake humanity. Absolutely. It's just like human beings, right? But most of the time, they're super interesting. And they're interesting in different kinds of ways. They may not be at all human like us. And so their motivations may be a little difficult to determine because we're looking at it through our anthropomorphic lens, right? We think we understand, we try to understand their emotional component and how they think, and we're basing it on our own human emotions, and that's ridiculous. But I can't tell you how many cool alien civilizations I've looked at, or how many cool encounters I've looked at. If you remote view some of the classic encounters out there that people have had, and I usually think, wow, those aliens are wicked cool. They're super interesting. They're brilliant. They're way smarter than me. What can I learn from them? Yeah. And it's like the one case you were just mentioning. And I've had multiple cases like that, although that one in particular was so breathtakingly beautiful. It makes me cry just remembering it right now. It's so beautiful. But there are many, many, many beautiful civilizations that have visited our planet, that are interested in our planet. Some of these beings have not visited our planet physically, but they are visiting us in similar ways to remote viewing, what would be comparable for them, and we can have interactions with them. And I would say that 9 times out of 10, you're going to get somebody who's absolutely amazing, who's non-human. And it's the rare case where you get somebody who is cranky or more militaristic or I just don't see an alien race coming here to take us over. And so when the government talks about it's a big national security threat, I think that that's just national security theater to keep humans in line, frankly.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had the same question as Mark. I remember last time you talked about this beautiful planet, the most amazing thing you ever saw, but we didn't record it. I wonder if you could tell that story again about this amazing planet that you saw.
Oh man, I know. Yeah, the last time the recording didn't happen, and so
I blame myself.
I swear, everybody, I had all these deep thoughts. But yeah, okay. So the most beautiful thing that I have ever remote viewed ever was this other alien existence, and it was this other planet, and it's going to make me cry just talking about it. I'm a little emotional tonight anyway for a variety of other reasons, but it was so breathtakingly beautiful, not just in how it looked and how it even smelled beautiful, and it sounded, the music from it, the music is like imprinted on my soul. And I've tried to and I'm a banjo player, so there's only so many ways you can recreate something beautiful on the banjo, but I've tried. And it was so otherworldly. The people on that planet were in complete harmony with each other and in complete harmony with everything around them. And they were sending out just en masse this joyful message that they were hoping would reach everybody out there. It's giving me goosebumps, guys, goosebumps right now, just remembering this. They literally had this whole planet-wide philosophy that they were going to send out the best that they could, their own consciousness, the best, to bring this kind of peace and love to the rest of the universe. That's literally what they were doing, what they had evolved to become, to be this beacon, this beautiful beacon. And I picked up on it in a session, and I've given it to others to remote view since, and everyone has the same. They're just knocked over. They're stunned with how incredible this experience is. It's, you can't even describe it in human language. You just can't describe it. It's the most beautiful, stunning, just gorgeous, and so full of love that if you had any anger in you or any stress, it would just be wiped out the second you felt that. And so I sometimes go back there just for the experience. When I feel stressed out at nighttime, I'm like, okay, I'm going to visit my friends and let that wash over me. And it's just, I'm going to start crying right now. Seriously, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Sure.
Yeah.
There's a question from the chat from Lobo Blanco. Yes, Birdie, do you have any experience or remote viewing of your past incarnations which hold relevance in this lifetime, i.e. missions or purposes on planet Earth? And if yes, do you believe you have met any of the kins who are also here acting out their individual purpose?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I do believe in past lives. I think that we have all experienced all kinds of different things. And I do think that we tend to travel in groups, where so the people that I'm surrounded with in this lifetime are the people I was surrounded with in the last time, just in different, different kind of, I'm admitting someone else here. So yeah, so absolutely. And I have looked at my past lives. Now, I'm sorry to say, I was never Cleopatra or anyone famous.
Were you a cab driver?
I was not a cab driver. I remember, I've looked at a number of past lives, and in each time I was generally somebody making a lot of noise and not getting very far. And it's like, oh yeah, here I am again, making a lot of noise and not getting very far. And I think I've had, the lives that I've looked at, a couple were male, most were female. I think I've been female more than male in the more recent lives for whatever reason, I don't know. But I can see similarities in who I am today and in who I was in those lives. I have a tendency to rebel against authority and to do what I want to do. And I'm kind of a mothership kind of a personality. People in my real life call me the mothership. Yeah, of course I do have multiple kids. They're all grown now granddaughter. And I'm an organizer for big UFO groups. I'm kind of the mothership for them. And back in the day of remote viewing, I was kind of the mothership there. And maybe I'm becoming that again. I don't know. So yeah, I have remote viewed my past lives. There were nothing to write home about, but all part of my path for sure.
Okay, so we got Andrew and then Carrie coming back.
Oh, hi again, Birdie.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, just like when you were talking about connecting with that civilization and the goosebumps it gave you.
Yes.
Do you have any suggestions on how someone could, I don't know, more willfully and more deeply sustain that and keep that connection going? Is it intermittent, spontaneous, or is it only through remote viewing that you're able to make that connection? Or how does that kind of, can you speak to how that works and how you could kind of make more of it? Is that possible?
Yeah. Well, at first I discovered it through remote viewing, and in subsequent visits close to the time when I first discovered it, I was using remote viewing to explore it further. But these days, if I want to experience that group, I feel like it's always connected to me now. So I can just do a little meditation at bedtime and I can hear it. I can hear that music. I can absolutely hear that music. And that brings the whole beautiful feeling alive. So yeah, absolutely. The thing about remote viewing, okay, so everybody thinks that remote viewing is kind of magic in some way. You have to do this particular set of exercises and then you get real data or whatever. And honestly, the exercises, schmexercises, it's just really you. It's you. It's you having an encounter and a beautiful experience. And the more that you do this and the more that you kind of let yourself go, you can just do it all the time. You're doing it all the time anyway. It's a question of recognizing it and being able to tune into all those kinds of frequencies. So you don't need the paper and pen. The more, the paper and pen is just there at the beginning so that your mind has an excuse to say you can do it, right? It's all an excuse, but you're just doing it all the time anyway. So yeah, you can turn into that beautiful civilization anytime and feel it and hear it and even smell it. Just the smell there, oh my gosh, is amazing. It's like lily of the valley all day long or something. I don't know, something amazing. We don't have lily of the valley here in New Mexico, but I remember what it smelled like growing up in Massachusetts, and I miss that flower.
Well, your original teaching, as you were, in the early days, you involved every sense in remote viewing. So that, would you say that helped you connect to that at every level, smell,
yes.
And then you identified with it. And so now you can more easily reconnect with it, I guess.
Yeah. You have to, as a remote viewer, you really, try to bring in all of those sensations that we have, the smell and the touch, and people are different kinds of remote viewers. This is like, I'm going to be covering this in my lecture series that I'm going to be putting on. There are different kinds of remote viewers. People are good at different kinds of things, but everybody can evolve to be a better version of what they start with. And so some people are going to have more of a visual sense. Some people have more of a tactile sense, more of an emotional sense, more of a conceptual sense. But the more you do, the more you can become in full all of those things and have a beautiful full experience that's truly everything all at once.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and Carrie, you're on next.
Hi, sorry again. When you encountered different species, have you ever encountered a species that you couldn't communicate with? Like say in English, did you have difficulty? So if you did, how did you get around that? Like, was music or symbols, gestures?
Yeah, that's a really good, Carrie, you've been asking good questions tonight. That's a good question. So yes, especially as a newer remote viewer years ago, there were species where it was literally impossible to translate what that experience is because it's so non-human. And this is true for many, I'll say many non-human intelligences. That's the buzzword these days, right? Now, aliens, right? We'll call them aliens. So there are many different kinds of aliens that are so unlike us. They don't have a language like we do. And even their emotions are completely different than ours. They're just based on completely different things. And their thought processes are completely different. Everything about them is so different that there's no human correlation whatsoever. And back in the day, those would be really hard to translate. And it's that translation process that gets better the more you do. And now, if I look at an alien species and it is very unhuman, I I have kind of, I have like a method that I use, kind of an internal method that I use to find, I look for what is the most commonality that we share, me and this species. And there's always something that's the most common. It may be our sense of color. It may be, you know, it could be like even how tactile something is. You can always find some, even if it's the tiniest commonality, and then you build on that communication from that small commonality. You start looking out around that. And I'm getting into a little more technical kind of remote viewing stuff here, but that's how I approach when I go to, when I am trying to have an interaction with a species that doesn't share anything in common with humanity. There's usually something as microscopic as it may be that you can build on. And usually they're looking for that too. If they're, you know, if they are a consciousness-based species and they realize that you're viewing, if you start with what that tiniest sense of commonality is, they will realize that and they'll help you. They'll help you build a translation device of sorts so that you can have some kind of a conversation. It may not be as fluid a conversation as you and I are having,
Right.
but it could be an interesting conversation.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, we got Jamie. Last question, unless there's any more. Okay, Jamie. You want your camera on? It's up to you.
Nope, still laying in bed.
Oh yes.
So John D. and Edward Kelly supposedly were trying to talk to angels, and angels said, "This will work a lot better if we just taught you the Enochian language and you could speak our language." Do you think there may be something similar to that, that aliens or non-human intelligences might teach us a better way to remote view, or something even better than remote viewing that we might be able to learn through remote viewing?
Well, the way that I remote view now isn't at all like how I used to remote view 20 plus years ago. So my method is very, very, very times a million different. It's crazy different. And so I think that I've developed a system that goes way beyond what what many people are still using today, because it's still based, most of those people are still using a methodology based on the original military method, CRV. And what I do today is really, really, really different. And I think it is a huge step up, quantum leap up in what's possible. And I believe that there are yet quantum leaps beyond this. I think that we're babies. We're babies in the study of consciousness, and this experiential study of consciousness is how I like to think about what we do. And, you know, we're still first generation in this. There's a bunch of new folks coming into the field. I'm excited to see what new people are going to bring to the table. And I love watching what I've been following everybody all these years, even though I've been quiet. And it's just fascinating to me to see the different directions people are going in and how everyone's figuring out different pieces of the puzzle. And for me, the experience itself is key. And that's what's most important to me. And that's what I've been focused on, is the experience as an individual and the experience I can bring to a group. And yeah, I think that we're just learning here, and there are so many more cool things we're going to figure out about our own abilities. And we may be evolved, you know, there's that whole theory that just physically we are evolving, our minds are evolving, our brains and everything, in order to be to have a more conscious experience with the universe around us. And that could be the case. I don't know. I know there's lots of research going on in those areas, but I think that there's cool stuff happening out there. So yeah, Jamie, we're getting there. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Okay, have you done, Jamie? Shecky's got a question here. Shecky, you can come in. Where'd he go? Did he leave the screen there? Shecky, yeah, you're still muted, Shecky. in the chat. He asked if he could ask a question.
Woohoo. I haven't even looked at the chat. Sorry, guys. I've just been too busy blabbing.
Yeah.
I'll check out the chat.
So it's about 5 minutes to the hour. Can you go a bit past, or did you want to stop on the hour?
I think I set this up to go exactly 2 hours, so I think it's going to kick us out. So we should.
Oh no, Zoom doesn't stop you. Like when you set up the time, Zoom doesn't cut you
Oh,
off.
we can go just a little bit longer because it's 9 o'clock here and I'm an old lady.
Okay. Yeah, well, Shecky, he's still muted, so there's seems to be no other questions. Oh, Edward Tilson's got a question.
Yay!
Go ahead, Elson. Go ahead, Edward.
ABQ UFOs member. Woo! ABQ represent.
Oh, you're muted, Edward. You have to unmute. You could turn on the light in your room if you want. Okay.
Okay. Hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. I've been thinking a lot about what's been happening, particularly in the United States, with all the diversity, all this conflict, polarization. And the sense I'm getting is that this is happening as part of a means to raise consciousness, to kind of get us to face who we are and to move to a different level out of this polarized 3D dimension to a higher level, like you described in that world of love and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of feel that there are things happening that are kind of leading us that way. And what are your thoughts about that in terms, and more specifically, what do you think might be behind that? Is it just a global consciousness of getting to the source of creation that's leading us that way? Is it ET influence involved in that? Or do you think that's even relevant?
Oh, I absolutely think there's some ET influence here. I think that, that I don't think that there's, okay, let me rephrase this. I think that we have been genetically manipulated over eons, and that there has been an ET influence on our genetics, our whole makeup, and who we are. And I think that there's an increased ET presence on the planet right now. People are reporting this. And I think that that's not a coincidence. I think that this is all, we're being led to have a more, conscious understanding of the world around us. And one thing that I do worry about is the whole transhumanism push and the whole push to, artificial intelligence. That's why I'm studying it, because I'm scared of it and I want to understand it better. And I'm fascinated by it. And I'm a pretty smart person, so I'm doing well in it. But I think that we're at a crossroads right now. Humanity's at a crossroads, and we have an opportunity to become way cooler than what we've been in the past. Or we have an opportunity to go in the other direction and to become less cool, to lose an essential part of our humanity. And I'm on the side of enhancing our humanity in all the right ways, in all the ways that are organic and beautiful. And we can still use technology in ways that can help us, but not giving our souls over to technology. But I do think that there is an ET interaction here that's been occurring and that's been prodding us to become more conscious in some ways. And I'm excited to be part of that.
I believe that what you referred to earlier as intention is critical in your thoughts and your emotions. You create your reality based on your beliefs and your expectations. So your positive thoughts, keeping in that way, imagery of a more peaceful world, a more peaceful country. I think that we have tremendous ability as humans that we are just not aware of. And I think if we can tap into that, I think that that's going to put us in a really good place.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you, everybody. I have really enjoyed this tonight. It's a nice rainy night here in Albuquerque, and this was a beautiful way to spend a couple hours talking with all you about remote viewing and a little bit about UFOs. And thank you, Brian, for hosting.
Yeah, were you going to give us a 3-hour video for University Galacticus? Could you talk a bit about that?
Oh yeah. So I am. So Brian has a really cool project that he's starting, and he can tell you about it.
I can share
There we
screen.
go.
Yeah, there's University Galacticus. Yeah, these are objectives. Yeah. So
Okay. So Brian has this really cool project, and I am going to make 3 videos for him. One is going to be on the history of remote viewing. One is going to be on what I've been doing for the past 20 years in remote viewing. And another one is going to be like a little mini workshop in remote viewing. And so I'm going to be getting those to him, and he's going to put them at his website. So you guys can follow Brian's site and see when I put those up. And other than that, you can follow me at abqufos.com or at norivets.com, which is my personal site. And I'm going to be posting my remote viewing lectures there, and everything's going to be completely for free because that's what I do. And now, who won the book? An amazing jar of honey from my backyard bees.
Okay.
The winner is, and this is a tough decision because everyone asked amazing questions, but I was really tickled by Carrie's questions tonight, and it's her birthday. So Carrie, you are the winner. Send me an email with your address, and these will go out in the mail tomorrow or on Monday.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool.
Okay,
Very
guys, I
honored.
love you all. Send me emails or whatever. I'm going to be kind of busy over the next week. I've got some just some personal stuff I'm working on, and but I will, if I will promise to get to your emails. It might take me a little bit. Okay. Love you all. And and those of you in my group, I'll see you a week from tomorrow at La La Cafe for our monthly social.
Okay. Well, this has been a brilliant Q&A. It's excellent, Birdie, and people can open their mics, give a little applause. Just the next 2 hours of Q&A.
Thank you, Birdie.
Thank you, Birdie.
Hey, thank you.